Agitevach. B'Shem Amitecha, B'Shem all my sisters-in-law, brothers-in-law. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight in honor of Tati's Asal Shloishim Seuda. Before I continue welcoming everybody, I'm looking around the hall. 3/4 of the hall is full of Tati and Mami's Eineklich and children. Trying to imagine what was on Tati's mind when he sat onto the train in 1960, 63 years ago, taking leave of his childhood, of his parents, and being goyled to a Mukim Toilet in its full sense. Did he imagine what type of Pesach Shamachat he was opening? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu can open for him a Pesach Shalilam. Just passed through my mind. I would like to welcome all our aunts and uncles. It means very much to us that you joined us tonight. All our cousins, nieces and nephews to Tati and Mami. It's really special to have you all here. A special welcome to all of Tati's friendships that spanned 40 years or more. Shmuel Papa, Chaim Yosef Steinberg, Shami Hershkowitz, Pesach Langsam, Rabban Yitzchak Adler, Yankel Gutman, Tanchem, and Gavril, the manager from the bakery. Thank you for coming, Gavril. A special welcome to Zamalab Schwartz, who is a childhood friend of Tati's, Mayor Weiss, who was in Tel Yeshiva with Tati, and the Chusha Rabbunim who honored us with their participation tonight. We gathered here tonight for Tati Shloishim. 30 days ago, we lost our father. We loved him. We adored him. He loved us. He adored us. We lost our dear father, but we didn't lose our crown. The case of Shem Tov that Tati acquired throughout his life, through Toile, Tefillah, Gemilas Chasudim, that case he passed on to Mami. And our Mami has got a huge crown of her own. Whoever knows Mami can testify to that. In my eyes, Mami is like a malach. Her name, which is the Shloishim Neshama of a person, is the same like the first two Imuas. I can't think of a better example of the Imuas than Mami. Her Chashivas HaTorah is the gold standard for any woman to look up to. Now I'll share a story with you. One day, Tati and Chesky were sitting in the office, and they were talking about Gedolei Yisrael. In the middle of the conversation, Tati told him, you should know, Yiddish Shemayim I learned from Mami. Saying that, Mami can't carry two crowns. She has her own. So it's up to us to take Tati's crown, split it into 12, and put it onto our heads. And share it with our kids. Now how do you carry Tati's crown? By learning from his midas. I'll share with you an idea I once heard. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, He made the sun and the moon. He made them equal. They were both just as big. Didn't take long. The moon complained. So Hashem said, no problem. The moon went down in size. So you have to understand, why didn't the sun have that issue? The sun was okay. The moon had that problem. The reason is, it's very simple. If you understand the nature of the sun gives light. The nature of the moon is it only receives light from the sun. So we see from here that the sun that's busy giving to others never gets insulted. He's busy giving. And we know the moon has no light of its own. It's only a reflection from when the sun shines into him. So Mr. Moon sits back in his easy chair all day and he complains, the sun can't be as big as me. Now back to real life. It's the same with people. Some people are like the sun. Some people are like the moon. The moon people are always receiving from the suns around them. The sun people have a light shining within them and it overflows to anyone they come in contact with. They light them up, they warm them up, and they are happy and content. That was Tati. Only a person who's full like that can be mashpia onto others in such a powerful way. Is that a good way to describe Tati's midas? Yeah, but I have a better way. I heard from Shimshon Pincus 2 rules. And if we internalize these 2 rules, it can change our lives. Rule number 1, Beinudam L'Mukim is Beinudam L'Chavaydoi. Rule number 2, Beinudam L'Chavaydoi is really Beinudam L'Mukim. Now let me explain. Our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to be like of a best friend. When someone gives you everything you have, your eyes, feet, family, your house, whatever, you name it, is our relationship not supposed to be like a best friend? Tati was so careful to make brachas out loud so we could answer Umain. When you mumble a bracha, you're insulting HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If someone tells you Lashon Hara about your best friend's kids, you won't repeat it. You try to hide it. You're not makabel. Tati's relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu was a Beinudam L'Chavaydoi relationship. If anyone tried to speak Lashon Hara in front of Tati, he would say, I quote, "Isn't that Lashon Hara?" Now, rule number 2, Beinudam L'Chavaydoi is Beinudam L'Mukim. When there's peace and harmony between people and family, then you have the Shechina. As it says, Ish v'ish shulam b'nayim Shechina b'nayim, and the house becomes like a Beis HaMikdash Ma'at. Tati and Mami's Shulam Bayis is the gold standard for all of us to emulate. Tati used to say the biggest favor a man can do for his children is to love their mother. The respect and warmth Tati had for every individual, no matter who, was legendary. My last encounter with Tati was Wednesday, the day before he passed away. It's on video, and in the footage, you can see I helped Tati out of the car, and the second he steadies himself, the first thing he does is he waves to someone with his classical wave, because he understood that Beinudam L'Chavaydoi is really only a tzinoid for Beinudam L'Mukim. Saying all these nice things, beautiful things, and describing how our dear father lived his long and purposeful life is very nice. If we don't take away something concrete to put into our daily lives, what's the gain? The Gemara in Tanis speaks about Yaakov Avinu Loi Mais. The Maral explains that it's only when his children live a life of Torah, then he has a bechin of Loi Mais. As a Shtayt Medrash, Kol HaManiach, Ben Yuga Ba Torah Ki'ili Loi Mais. Whoever leaves behind a child who toils in Limud HaTorah is the bechin of Loi Mais. Tati excelled in all 3 midos v'shtayt, Shloishim moed al Torah, avoida, and gemilas chasudim. My memories from Tati in Besmedish was Shmuel. He stood by his stender, didn't move, his hand on his forehead. That's how he said Shmuel. Yoitzis was a celebration. It wasn't oimed, that was only Yoitzis. Tati said Yoitzis with a ganzige Schmack. He used to give a shir on Yoitzis. If we can take anything that we know from our father and our grandfather and put it into our daily lives, it's Zana Bachine for Novini Loi Meis. I'd like to call up my brother Chesky to do the siyum on the Mishnayos Nishmas Tati.
Aish v'tzesayim amalai. Omer b'shem machalach telemutzik v'shbarach yiklimach zibluch el Yisrael el Rashulam. Shneimar Adinoi Oiz Lama Yitain Adonai Yivurach Sami Bashulam. Hadden Allah seit der Taz v'shitu sidra Mishnah v'hadden Allah. Daten Allah seit der Taz v'shitu sidra Mishnah v'daten Chalon v'lusas Nashem Minach seit der Taz v'shitu sidra Mishnah v'lusas Nashem Minach Lu ba'amadam v'lu ba'amaduuse. Harav nu adin erayis divis rasach befini befi amcha b'ais Yisrael v'ni yakeluni anachni v'tzitzuayni v'tzitzuay amcha b'ais Yisrael keluni yod eshmeich v'lom deseichu l'shmach v'oi betach hakmayim v'tzeseich kiloilim v'ili yihi libi somen b'chikeich l'man l'yayva shloilam l'yashkach b'kideich kibam b'chiyisuni burich atu adinoi lamdani chikeichu umain seilu vuet Moed ani lefneichu adin elahai v'lahai v'sai shesamtu chelki milsh v'smedish v'samtu chelki milsh v'krunis שאני משכים והם משכימים. אני משכים לדברי תורה והמשכים לדבורים בתיילם. אני אומייל והם המיילם. אני אומייל מקבל שכר והם המיילם ואין מקבלים שכר. אני רץ והם רוצים. אני רץ לחייל המהבה והם רוצים לבי שחס. שנאמר ועטו אליהם תרידם לבי שחס. אנשי דומים בימימו ליחץ ימיים ואני אפתח בך. Yrutzum v'nechu adinoi elahai v'lai v'sai k'sham shazatang l'sayim sa'adatars v'shish sidr mishne kain tazayni l'hasras tur mechayrem l'saymam lilmoid l'lamayt b'techachuba lishma v'lasis l'kaim as kol divrei samet l'seichu b'yahavu v'schiz kol atanuem sabid ha'chachomem haneskurim b'sa'adatars v'chalastum shalamadti yamad li l'zari l'zei shlo tumish ha'toira akdoish mipi zari v'zei l'zari v'mayatu v'yadoilam Yikim bui mikre shekuse b'salechu tan choisach b'shach b'chu tishmar eleichu v'akitzoisu hiti sichechu ki biyir b'yemeichu v'yisif ilchu shnais chayim oirech yom b'yimina b'smoil oishe v'kuvoid adinoi oiz la'am yitain adonai yivurach chasamai b'shulan V'skadai shmai rabu v'yomud v'rechrisai v'amlech marchisai v'yatzmach b'kunai v'kurai m'shichai B'chayaychoin, b'yamaychoin, b'chayay, b'chol bayis Yisrael, v'agulu v'zman kure v'imriyumayin. Yahai shmai rabu m'urach li'ulam, lo me'omayu, yizburach, v'yishtabach, v'yispuah, v'yisroim, v'yisnasai, v'yishadar, v'yisale, v'yisalol, shmai dekitshu b'richi. La'aylu, m'kol b'chusu, v'shirusu, v'shb'chusu, v'lechamusu, v'amiram b'yomu, v'imriyumayin. Al Yisrael, Val Rabunan, Val Tamidayon, Val Kol Tamidayon, Tamidayon. Kom man das kun bei Reisu, die Bas Sudain, mit die Bechol Asar, Vasar. Yahai, Lehoin, Lechoin, Shlumu Rabu, Chilu, Bechizdu, Berachmen, Chayin, Arichen, Im Zoin, Revichai, Bekunu, Bekudam Avin, Bishmai, Uvaru, Vimri Yumain. Yahai, Shlumu Rabu, Mishmai, Bechaim, Toiv, Mulain, Bakol Yisrael, Vimri Yumain. Ois, Shulam, Imroima, Vyas, Shulam, Mulain. Kol Yisrael v'imri yumayin.
It's a call for the Mishpocha to call up Harav Yisuch to represent Ruben Shul in Divnes the Chroines von Tatum.
Gesessen, ich mir gedacht, ach heute ist zurück, bei der Lawaie. Jeder eine von den Kindern hat so Chushev ein Herzig gerät. Und für jede einzige Drusche bin ich geworden, Morde Gibbe genommen. Mein Nuchem habe ich noch nicht gehört, ich hätte es noch Maschlum sein. A Kapunem, am Mitzchok, so du, bei Sayach gewähnt früher, hat rausgebringt ein mordige Wort, wo es hat mich der Mann von einer Stickel in der Woche die Gesedre. Denkst du nicht, der Luschen ist jetzt so benutzt, als wie geht, und fragt ihm, sie ist der Mord gesehen, und gesucht mit der Stolz, gesucht der Wort Pride, ich denke nicht, welche Worte genutzt. Als ist der Mord gesehen, sucht das mit der starke Stolz. Du hast Seifers Fasemes, wenn es Seiner im Fabisch Bejaner. Schreibt der Woche die Gesedre Pashas Beshalach, als Amul gewähnt Shabbos Shire beim ersten Belseruf, beim Schulen Belser, Schar Schulen, und gehört mitten schon der Shire, wie der Belseruf hat sich zerschrieben und gesucht, als Jid darf sich ausarbeiten sein ganzes Leben, als seine Kinder sollen kennen, suchen auf ihm, Elokai Uvi Varomemeni. Du darfst sagen, da wollte von der Jida ganz Leben. Die Kinder sollen sich kennen, groß halten und suchen an den Kai-Uvi. Tage mit dieser Sort Ausdruck, aber man soll sich fühlen stolz. Aber getracht, als der Weg, wie so ein Miet kann umkommen, zu Asad, am Adreige von der Kai-Uvi war über Meni, ist der Pusik sucht früher, sehr Kai-Liebe am Wei. Sehr Kai-Liebe am Wei, nur etliche Pschuten. Oder war am Wei, weiß man nicht jeder eine, scheinmachende Mitzvahs. War am Wei, sucht der Targem, wer Evnelei bei Mikdische, mit Bona bei Samikdisch, oder wie Chazal darstellen, an nie wo hi. Ich kann auch ein Leben mit Neibischen. Aber man kijkt in das Leben für den Mordche, es ist sehr schwer zu reden, man sieht eine ganze kleine Hore, eine Saal von Menschen, die kennen den Mordche von einem Weg, ich kenne den Mordche, von wenn ich gedenke mich, ist der Mordche gewesen ein Heilig für mein Leben, also bin ich aufgewachsen, von der Beerdig ein Jahr und ein halb, mein Cheskel, ich gedenke mich noch fahre ich gedenke mich, und das ist gewesen ein Heilig für mein Leben, ich gewesen ein Mordche. Aber ich meine, dass alle drei Pschuten waren, weil es passig zu suchen auf der Mordche. Wir haben bei Mikdische, waren weil Schein gemacht, dem bei Samedrisch. Und gelebt mit Neibischten, Tag und Nacht im Besmedrisch. Wusste das getan im Besmedrisch, ein ganzer Heufur, war mit Kabeles Kaluudam, Besaiver Punem Jufes, wo ich gehört am Ulatatsch, Besaiver Punem Jufes, als Menschen sollen liebhuben zu Steine seiner Dalle Dames. Jeder im Besmedrisch hat lieb gehabt zu kommen, und wissen, dass Mordche geht am Aufnehmen bei Seiber Punem Jufes. Wenn gewinnt, der Gabe, der Jamoy, ich habe nicht gewiss bis später, bis Chochassene gehabt, als nur ein anderer Weg, wie soll ich sagen, eine Gabe. Aber ein Jamoy, der gewinnt ein Jamoy, der Mischabeirich, ich gewinnt ein Mischabeirich, und jeder Nummer bei der Mischabeirich, ich gewinnt ausgesucht mit einem ganzen Knack, mit der Band, und gemacht sicher, dass der Nehmen jeder einer soll hören, wie man hat gesucht. Hat einmal gehabt ein Kind, aber es gewinnt an jedem Besmeidrisch, was hat nicht gehabt, kann Sach. Ich gewinnt also social mit den Eulen. Also wenn jener hat Eulen gewinnt, hat gemacht, dass mich beide von noch ein Bunch Menschen, die sitzen an ihm jenen, als wenn jener zurückgekommen hat, allem gescheucht, und jener gewonnen hat, er ganz heilig von der ganzen Chabire. Dus ich weiß, ein Kind, wie hat allemal getroffen, in jeden einen zu treffen, dem Kleidsch, in jeden einen machen viel, wie jeder, $1 Million, Mama, was ist, hat sich bei ihm geläumt, die ganze Maße. Dus ich weiß, Mordche. Ich meine, wir pflegten in den ersten Jahren beglaut, dass man wissen, Geset, Menschen, die nach Sach Geset, du hast Sachbale Geset, sei das Sachbale Geset. Aber sei das Sach von der Bale Geset, dann kein Mund nicht mischen, sei Geset mit seinem Business. Das ist zwei andere Sachen. Business ist Business, und Geset ist Geset. Ein Mensch soll nehmen sein Panusse, nehmen sein Business, und von dem machen ein Stück Geset. Dus ist ein echter Ball Geset. Sag halt, du, Tetre Stadl ist ein Panusse, aber dann ist es Geset. Wir können jeden zufrieden bringen, der Brot, machen sicher, dass du was zu essen. Ich der Mann, wenn ich Gassene gehabt, ein bisschen später, mein Bruder Yitzchak hinter mir hat Gassene gehabt. Mordche bei uns gewesen, jahrelang, der Waldfülle auf Psyche des Zimmer, der Heilige Tag, das ist schon im Kippur, das ist gewesen, Waldfülle Psyche des Zimmer. Und mein Bruder hat Gassene gehabt, Yitzchak, ist Mordche umgekommen, Yitzchak geht da, wenn Psyche des Zimmer fahren muss. Mordche, nein, es ist jahrelang gesucht. Ich habe es nur gehalten, als soll es Gassen haben, als soll es kennen übernehmen. Das ist gewesen, Mordches Zielgang. Und es sucht mit Asami, hat man Tage bei Emmes gehalten, also seit alle Jahren ist gehalten, nur wegen dem. Ich meine, es ist so übergegeben, aber man hat sich bei Emmes gekannt, da reden, das ist Tag so. Es ist übergegeben, also hat er gemacht, sicher später, sie kommen schon Schiedes teure, wo Jungs, man hat schon nicht gelebt. Hat er gemacht, nein, ihre Zungen schon Schiedes teure, ich mache nicht. Wenn ich mein letztes Mal Leute gewesen mit dem, wenn ich mich nicht gelost. Nein, ihre Zungen, wer hat er in der Tag gesucht zum Sohn. Und also ich gewinne nach ganzen Zeit, also ich gewinne mit der Ballmakerin, also ich gewinne mit jeder Sache. Allemal übergeben, man bent al met Gochem, man hat al met Gochem. Wir haben bei uns gemacht viel und Kili, wir kennen meinen, dass wir retten, weil es gewinnt so mit jedem einen, nicht nur mit uns. Also ich gewinne mit jedem einen, was hat sich gedreht darin, hat allemal gemacht, sicher, man soll machen viel und wie jenen ist der wichtigste Mensch in der Welt. Nun, aber man kann sich mitnehmen mit dem, eine Katze ist an kurz, man gelebt zusammen so viele Jahren, es ist nicht kein Matzef in kein Alavaya, aber es steht doch Achem bei Speider, du Husam Kuimne, als wir retten Speider von einem Mensch, ich dachte, Schumme du, und dann sagen wir Matze für den Mordche gewinnt ein Stück Gitzkeit, ein Stück Cyberpun im Jufes, ein Stück Chesed, man redet schon nicht, noch einmal, man kann Marek sein, aber es ist nicht meine Pflicht, du jetzt Marek zu sein, wegen der Heilige Teure mit alles, aber in Asam Matze ist Taka Avade, als beschämtigt das Medrisch, und es haben alle gehabt, der gewaltige Akuris Atov, versteht sich, als ob sie gewinnt einmal am Matze, wo sie gewinnt, Shaloi Lefi Ruhi, Lefi Jakubet, wie sie darf zu sein, ist Avade, als wir jetzt, sieht man, dass alles hat gemeint Le Teuwe, und alles hat gewähnt Le Teuwe, und keiner gaat zur Schule im Karege, hat sicher nicht geherig, man hat gewähnt, also in der Seite der Woilom. Es soll der Eibisch der Helfer auf jene Welt, soll er sein an meine Zioische, sei, für keine Horde, der lechtige Bespuche, was gehabt man mich, gehabt der Chills, wenn man sieht, dass Amin, keine Horde. Und sei, für alle anderen, gibt es Hawaii, mit Jedidem, was gehalten, also in Nun, als alle so viel, so bekuren, man mich solche sein, so Tchies am meisten, wie es mich jetzt, keine, beim Heide, wie meine Umein.
It's a big honor and a chashivas to call upon Harav Yonasan, a long-time friend of the family and of Tati's, and a long-time Abed's Toilet, to repeat Divrei Chizik v'Zechronis from Tati's Zechronis V'Ruchem. Shkoich.
A gute Woche. When Chesky called me to speak tonight, he Bedavke asked, he told me I'm the only speaker. Das darf ich vorsorgen. I have to apologize to everybody. He told me I'm the only speaker tonight. Ich habe ihn gefragt, wer noch da? So I'm asking Mechila by everybody, B'Shem Chesky. But when he gesagt, I'm the only speaker, he said, we need somebody to speak in English, we need somebody to speak. Van Uyfen, very difficult time to be asked to speak about somebody who's so choviv, so beloved, so mekusher to so many people. And the sense of loss that everybody has is neira neirois. But as we move forward, in a way, the appreciation of what we had becomes much more pronounced. Oz Yoshi Moshe, Says Rashi, Ola beliboy loymar shira. Even before Kriyas Yamsuf, even before Klal Yisrael goes into the Yamsuf, even before the Mitzrayim are drowned, Moshe Rabbeinu was Ola beliboy loymar shira. The thought of saying shira entered his mind. But he didn't actually say shira until afterwards. Oz Yoshir Moshe. And then Rashi says, Umedrish Agoda Mikan Litchias Amesim Min HaTorah. From here we see not Oz Yoshir Moshe Rabbeinu said shira now, but Oz Yoshir Moshe Rabbeinu will say shira later. Mikan Litchias Amesim. Tchias Amesim is never spelled out. Hagam it's from the Yud Gimel Ikrim. Aber Tchias Amesim is never mefurish in the Torah. Aber Aremes in the Torah do Oz Yoshir Moshe, Oz Shor Loi Nemar, Ela Oz Yoshir Moshe, Mikan L'Tchias Amesim in HaTorah. And in Pashtus, it's two separate understandings of what Oz Yoshir is. Reb Shimon Schwab Zecher Tzadik Livrocha is Magdir. Every machshava toiva that a person has, every rayon, every thought that a person has to do a davar toiv, creates a roisham. Reb Chaim Volozhiner writes in the beginning of Pirkei Avos, Kol Yisrael yesh lem chelek lo olam haba. Steht nicht bo olam haba, nor lo olam haba. Because when a person has a machshava to do a davar toiv, it creates an oyer. It creates an aura. It creates a kedusha. And that kedusha surrounds him. And that kedusha envelops him. And that kedusha gives him a koyach to go forward and do the maisa that he had a machshava toiva for. Kol Yisrael yesh lem chelik lo olam haba. When he finishes the maisa, that oyer, that aura, that kedusha that was created with his machshava is then the olam haba which is waiting for him. Oz Yoshir Moshe, when Moshe Rabbeinu was Ola beliboy loymar shira, Mikan L'Tchias Amesim Min HaTorah, that oyer, that machshava toiva, that thought, that intention to do what is right and what is good, that becomes the olam haba that a person is then zeicha to. He is creating his own olam haba. We stop and think about what Reb Mordche Zecher Tzadik Livrocha is enveloped in. A life of goodness, a life of caring for others, a life of thinking, what can I do to make others happy? What can I do to bring nachas ruach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And we begin to have a little bit of a sense of the gewaldige oyer that envelops Reb Mordche now, and we can have a shaykhis to that oyer also. It was mentioned before, but I want to talk about it only because, as somebody who lived in Seagate for 25 years with Reb Mordche, I knew him before I came. I had been zoiche in Riverdale to get to know him through Chesky. And I came, and Reb Mordche enveloped me with a gewaldige Warmkeit, with a gewaldige feeling of iskarvus. I want to share with the Olam Reb Mordche's feelings of what he could do to make others feel good. We had a yeshiva 25 years ago, a small yeshiva, worked very hard, we struggled, and it was important to me that we shouldn't have chayvis, that the rabbeim should be paid on time. I'm walking down the street, for those who know Seagate, down Nautilus Avenue, 3 houses. I'm walking down the street at 7:20 in the morning, and a shochin Reb Chaim Shmuel Friedman is walking into his house. He had just davened Shachris in the 6:30 minyan in Rubens. And he's walking into his house and he sees me across the street walking into the yeshiva. He says, Reb Yonasan, you're very serious. You look very vertrogen. I said, I'll tell you the emes. I am. I worked very hard at the Rebbeim. We should not have chayvis. I have a payroll that's due today. And I don't have a penny for the payroll. Not one penny. That's all. Nothing more than that. I'll give you an idea of what kind of a neighborhood Seagate was and Seagate is. And I go inside to daven Shachris at 7:30. After Shachris, we had a Seuda being Maver Sedra. And I sit down with the Oilam, the Bochum is sitting with tefillin on, and the being Maver Sedra, and the door to the Besmedrish opens, Reb Mordche comes in. Reb Yonasan, I have to speak to you right now. Right now, I have to speak to you right now. Reb Mordche, can I wait a minute? I stand up, talis and tefillin, I go outside, and Reb Mordche reaches into his pocket. He says, Chaim Shmuel came back to the Besmedrish. He came back to Reuben's Besmedrish, and he told me, Reb Yonasan is under pressure because he doesn't have money for a payroll. He reaches into his pocket, he took out $5,000 cash. I didn't ask him for a nedova. I didn't tell him what I need. He took out $5,000 cash. You need this more than I do. He handed me $5,000 cash. It was the exact amount I needed to cover a payroll. Rabbi say, I don't know if the Olam understands what's for a chizuk. It's not the payroll that was covered. It's not the nedova of $5,000. It gives a koyach to a person to go on. When a person sees that others care about you, the Rebbeinu Shalom sends shluchim. The schus that he had then, I think about it, and he didn't want nishken yashakoyach, nishken receipt, nishken dos, nishken yens. All he wanted was to know as a gate weiter and that others are doing well. That was my introduction, really, to the Mordche's Hagoshes of caring and taking care of others. That is who Reb Mordche Berkovitz was to me. Nobody asked him, nobody sat down with him, nobody explained to him the Neitigkeit, the Yeshiva, the Gebeten, come and gone. You need, I can help you, tuich weiter. That's how Reb Mordche was. But as a Toishev in Seagate, the Nekuda that struck me kiseder, chutz von the gewaltige Gutskeit, was a Nekuda of Reb Mordche lived. He lived with a moiridike Roimemus, a gewaltige Hecherkeit, a gewaltige sense of the grandeur of what it means to be a Yid who has a shaykhis with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it stellt sich aus in the Besmedrish. There's not a Besmedrish in Seagate that he didn't beautify. But beautify meant in many, many, many small ways. It's hard to think about it now because after Sandy it didn't exist. But there used to be a room in the bottom of Reuben's Besmedrish on Oceanic Avenue. That room at the back of the downstairs, Dorton is Reb Mordche's cave. That's where Reb Mordche hibernated. That's where Reb Mordche hid out. Dorton, he had scissors, he had tape, he had sticky notes, he had alle mine Sachen dort, that he was busy mit Kuntreisim, mit Yomtiv Kuntreisim, ein Sach noch ein zweiten. But he was busy with the Besmedrish. Maybe there was a zettel on the Omid, the Baal Tefillah has to make sure to say Kodesh, Kodesh, Kodesh Hoyech, and say Baruch Kved Hashem im Koimah Hoyech, Kedei Menschen was davenen noch Shmoneh should be Yoitze with him. Maybe it was making sure that there was a garbage can with a foot, with a step, that you stepped on it in order to open the cover, so that the towel shouldn't be all over. Maybe it was making sure that there were lids for the coffee, because if somebody took a coffee while he was learning, if the coffee should chas v'shalom spill, the coffee is going to affect the Svarim, and the Svarim will be dirty. And Memele Reb Mordche didn't just put it, there should be lids for the coffee. And gelebt mit a Musik von lefoyer uleroimem beis Elokeinu. What can I do to make the Besmedrish shene, to make the Beis Medrash more comfortable, to make the Beis Medrash more usable for the Olam. You didn't have to ask him. And it was not just in that Beis Medrash, it was in any Beis Medrash that he came to. Bad Alvaya was mentioned, paper towels, Bad Alvaya. Sie gewen am Musik von Leben in the Beis Medrash. And Avram Yitzchok said it meidig. He made the Beis Medrash his home, he made his home a Beis Medrash. But had gelebt mit der Hechigkeit, mit der gewaltige Hechigkeit, that this has to be a mokim for remembrance, verhecheren the Yachas mit der Kodesh Baruch Hu. Ze Keli vi Anveyu. Se nicht nur his neue Lefon of Bemitzvahs. Se nicht nur the Mahuaf Ato. Se given a Musik von, in this place it has to be Bakovidik, it has to be nice. I want to remind some of those sitting here of a little bit. There was an old bench. There was an old bench in the front of Reuben's Beis Medrash that I think Mr. Korn Zechrein Levrocha used to sit on. An alte bench von an alte Schiel. 2 seats on that bench. Gedenk noch, sie gewinnt, there was a bench, an alte bench. And it sat next to the Mordche stander. And Amol, when the Einiklach came, the Einiklach sat on that bench. When the Mordche's kinder came, exactly which shul it came from, weiß ich nicht. Maybe it was from an alte, ich weiß nicht. It was an old bench. In English we call it a pew. A P-E-W, a pew. Von an alte Beis Medrash, it sat there. The Weile, the yeshiva moved in 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. And I mentioned to the Mordche, he says, we can't stand in the way of progress. We can't stand in the way of progress. Yes, it means a lot to me. That bench means a very lot to me. But if it's going to make a difference in space for the yeshiva and the way they're going to use it and so on and so forth, please take it away. For those of us who knew what that bench meant to him, when the Einiklach came, that bench was cleared and the Einiklach sat on it. It was a chelik of his Beis Medrash. And at the same time, you know what? If this is what's going to help to give a chiyuz to the Beis Medrash, loman azeiton, loman azeimachin, loman azeiton. He lived. What can I do to make that in the Beis Medrash soll sein shene? For those who remember, sie gewen eine Herzke. There was Hetzi. Sie gewen eine. He gave him a job in the bakery. He worked for a while in the bakery, but he died wegen Hetzi. When Hetzi is avek, he went and he was menade basuka leilu nishmosa. He gave to the David Meisels, to the Beis Medrash. Nicht the Beis Medrash he was davening in Bechlal. There should be something, it bothered him. There should be something choshuv. There should be a psazecher amizkeres, somebody that he loved deeply. And the way that he was able to be mazkir such a person was by laying to his noye lefonov b'mitzvahs. This is what was important to him. This is what was meroimim him. This is what he felt. This hecherkeit. This is what I got keseder. At keseder gelebt in der Welt von Reimemus Atfila. As a Telzer, it was mentioned that he knew Reb Shimon Meir Weiss from his time in Telz. For those who remember, I never had the schiyah of davening Yom Kippur in Avodas Yisrael in Koznitz and Seagate. I was never there. But Reb Mordche would come to me before Yom Kippur, because Yom Kippur by night, in the Piyutim was mezogen, in the Sliches was mezogen, Yom Kippur by night, anstatt the Bal Tfilah, sie gewen andere Piyutim Reb Mordche said. Why did the Mordche say it? Weil in Telz hat man gesagt mit a gewisse Nusach. Omnom kein has kategor v'kach saneger mikoimoy. And the Mordche had gesagt about Tfilah, you take a break, I'm taking over, ich nehme es. And he used to come to me beforehand, push it to practice. Wie hat man das gesagt in Telz? Also hat getan, gelebt in jener Welt. He was living in that world of was kementon, mit Räumim sein, the Beis HaTfilah, mit Räumim sein, HaKeshem mit HaKodesh Baruch Hu, mit Räumim sein, Avodas Hashem. For those who sort of could trace him, that he printed before Simchas Torah. Ich denk noch the Simchas Torah in Avodas Yisrael. Again, We're going back 12, 15 years. He printed up Solo Kokoshmar, and he printed up Nigunim, and he printed up Werte, the Oilem soll dich mitsingen. It should be of a Shene Eufen, not because he wanted this Niggin and Jena Niggin, but that Megain is Pravin, let's do it of an Eufen, which is done in a beautiful Hechere Weg. Mordche gewen a Metzies von Hecherkeit. Gewen Hecher von alle Machloikes, gewen Hecher von, gewen an Isholoin. He lived in a world that was Meroimim, a world that was above. Oz Yoshir Moshe. Ola Beliboy Loima Ashira. Mikan Litchias Amesim min HaTorah. Der Musik von Leben mit Hecherkeit, von Wellen, von Streben, from yearning to live a life that was a life of above, a life of Iskarvis to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a life of giving covet to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is the Olam Haba that the Mordche is Baruch Hashem sitting in, and that is the Tchias HaMeisim that Im Yitz Hashem is all zusammen Zeuche sein, zusammen freien mit them to once again see him. Bekitzur Sheikh Neofor Im Yitz Hashem, aber derweil the Nachas was hat von seinen Kindern, what he left over and what he impacted in his lifetime here on this world, that should stay with us, and that should be for us a gewaltige Zikaron.
So I guess the Chashir is to call up Harav Berkovitz. Tati had a very, very close relationship with him all the years. To live out the Havas Nefesh. Tati used to tell us, go to the Berkovitz. The Berkovitz is going to talk. Go, it's worth it. It's a big comfort for the family. He's here tonight. It's a big comfort. And to give over to his friends, so Tati's going to go.
Bereshis alle Chushev versammelte, Bereshis alle Kinder einiglich, Bereshis mein Gitte Yedin, Shem Meir HaKoyen Beis, Bereshis die Chushev Rupschlitte, alle Rabunen. Damals ist, ich weiß nicht, ob es passt, als ich noch aufstellen zu reden, noch, haben wir schon gehört, war bei Tendler, Juren zurück, frage ich gar nicht, ja, Asifas from Shalsheles. They used to make Shabbos as Vadas, and there were two speakers who used to speak by these Shalsheles events. One was Reb Shimshon Pincus, and one was Reb Zio Tauber. At that time, we didn't realize who Reb Shimshon Pincus was, because he lived in our generation, and we listened to him. After he passed away, all of a sudden his fire, his flamme, hat aufgelacht und aufgebrennt. Alle Medinas, jetzt ist so lieber that da Sachs fuhren from Shimshon Pincus. I remember that when the Brazil Tauber used to address the Oilem, he always used to start with the following. He used to say, Im Chochme ein Kaan, Zikni Yesh Kaan. So if I don't have much Chochme to contribute, to add to what was said already, Zikne Yeshkan, I think I'm older than most of the people that are assembled in the room, maybe some exceptions. And definitely, Mordche Shmuel Yonasan, the Meishub Devurim, was very, very close to my heart. In essence, I considered him a role model. Because he combined this combination of Torah Igdila B'Mukoy Mechad. Na Mishnah in Pirkei Ubis, Mishnah sucht, Jufet Talmud Torah in der Recheretz, Gia Shnayim Ashkachas Uvoim. B'chol Torah Sharim HaMeluchas Zoifa B'Teile. Hatte du verschiedene Menschen, verschiedene Hanhuges, verschiedene Schkufes. So ich habe gehört, am Moladrush, was Aruf hat aufgerufen als verstehen nicht die Mischne, aber es ist besser, dass wir verstehen alle Mischnes und nicht die Mischne. Wir verstehen die Mischne und nicht alle Mischnes. Das ist also verämpft, als halten nicht von dem, was die Mischne sucht. For me, Mordche Shmuel Yonasan personified this Mischne. Ich gesehen ein Gedanke, was ist noch mehr maßbar, wo der Mishnah ist, Yegiya Shnayim, Mashkachas Uvoin. Aber ich gesehen, als das Wort Yegiya, kann ich sagen, Aluschen Negiya, ob es ist Masse im Matten, auf Pia Teure, bei Minne, und ob es ist Talmud Teure zusammen, Yegiya Shnayim, Hanegiya Shal Shnayim, She'echad Nichnas Letchimoy Shel Chavayroi, Venogim Zeh Bezeh, Merubim Zeh Bezeh, Mashkachas Uvoin. The Mordche Shmuel Yonasan personified this combination. On the one hand, he was about Panusa, a gefirta, a bakery, a getin the hechte level of Tzedukah by hiring people and giving them maskoires, giving them a job so they can have Panusa on their own. And you know, the Rambam in Matnas Aniyim rechnet those, the 8 verschiedene Madragas von Tzedukah, Kilom, Oile al-Gebayim, the hechte level, is if you provide a living for another person, that other person should be able to make Panusa b'derech kubed, nish kind of handouts, and that Panusa is through a job that you created. Mordche Shmuel Yonasan did that, among many other things. And at the same time, he was kol kiloi Teure. He was kol kiloi Teure. Він ayid mit a breite Yedias, in kol machmane hashas, madrushim, harim and harim. First Mal when I got to know him, hat gegeben a Matuna. Wir geben a Matuna a Cipher, was heißt Eis Hazumir. It's a Cipher of Zmiris of Shabbos. And he gave this to me in Tuf Shin Nian Vuv. That's 28 years ago. The Rose gave him the Zmiris, but the Chasana from Zanzin, the Björn Berkovitz, in Baskila, Kala, Ruchel, Klein. He gave out the Zmiris. And he gave me this Zmiris. And when I looked into it, I saw that the Zmiris had a bunch of aguas. I'll give you just an example, just to give you an understanding of the Breitkeit von dem Yid. Wir singen Shabbos Nefri. We're singing El Hurim Esu Einai, Kehillel V'loi Keshamai. At the Tzigashim of the Zad, I made a copy over here instead of looking for the page now. At the Tzigashim of the Zad, Yesh minig loy mer ike shamai, wa de loose tia haluch gemoisoy. Anstatt wir suchen gehille bloike shamai, du am minig suchen gehille ike shamai, aber man weiß doch, a loose loy mit haluch geshamai. Wie tu genoid, ab ihr Beine ha gru, du sagt das Eidem darf Yid, with doik. That's all it says, a few words. Kijk eraan de cijfer van de wilde goen of zegt het Eidem. And guess what? I looked up the Gemara, I looked up the Koila Liyui of Masechtas Eidem, the Liyui wilde brengt dort, als de Machloikes, jeder weiß de Machloikes, sof Masechtas Gitten, wenn ein Mensch kann geben a Get für seine Frau. In die Gemara sagt dort, als Beshamal galt lo yekara shmuda besishtoi elim keimutzu bo erwas duvar. Nor als du an erwas duvar, demos kenner megaras an ishtoi. Besiloi mir mafile gdichet afshiloi. Das ist eine schwere Gemurre, das ist eine andere Gelegenheit. Auf die Gdichet afshiloi, das verbrennt dem Tafshil, kämen megaras an, aber das ist ein Mischnis. Ein Mischnis ist auch von sechtes Gitten. Und du dort in der Wilde Guen, sucht das in Sofa, die Gemurre 4 Toos, als hubig sie begrischen und hubig sie begscheini. Meile Lefizeh ist Jotze Baskel, Womre, Ille Wille Dibrel Kem Chaim, beide sein Nehmen, Slaibe Shame, Slaibe Sillel. Das event sich, it depends on the situation. Look, der Wilde Guen, Mische Rubi, Talmide, Shama, Hillel, Shloishim Shik al Zorkon. Haben sie nicht verstanden, die Chilikim. Als Beshama hat gesucht, ich muss bei Eber Luber geht darauf auf Sivik Rischen, in die Gedichte auf Schiele geht darauf auf Sivik Scheini. In sucht, dass wir nasse Machloikes misse, aber Bemes Schneiem nemri mi Sinai, Shekolechot nemer aloifen Acher. Ich kann Ihnen Shemuzini, Marum Malchude, Veloi Pliege. Ist der Mordche Shmuel Yonasan hat sich gleich ein Wort. Kiek noch, wo der Wilde Guen hat Mechadr zu sein. Du musst es Mechadr ist, dass die Beschammung bis Hille kriegen sich nicht. Now, it depends on the situation. Zivik Rishon is ein Rule, Die wahrscheinlich der zweite Ruhe, die laut dem, die Pusche verstehen, als man kann suchen, hure Messe weina, kille Like Schamai, weil ich hat wurde mit seinem gesucht, ist beide gewesen bei anderen Situations, andere Umständen. Ein klein Remes, das hat sie geschrieben in dem Cipher, für Neisa Summe. Auf dem Deckel hat geschrieben, Leute, die Kuren, die machen noch Nummern, und schreibt hinter Menui hat zu ihr, V'hoyu lechu le'meishiv nefesh. V'hoyu lechu le'meishiv nefesh. The word meishiv, they were the Weißen, is Mordche, Shmuel, Yonasan, Berkovitz. That was his name. And he used to write on himself as the meishiv devurim. Sach Artikel geschrieben, gedruckt geworden in Hamuy, in seine Chedishim. Kem es suchen, Aleila ani boi chiu, Einu yordi ma'im. Kiruchak memeni menachem meishiv nafshi. Der meishiv nafshi was geschrieben in dem Eisa Summer. Aleila ani boi chiu. Was kann ich suchen, was der Mann früher teure avoidig will es Chasudem. Als Shloishim de Wurm Oile Moim, aber ich habe gehört, der Gedanke, als da sag Menschen, was ein guter Beteure. Und die sind gute Beteure, aber der Klaus sind nicht gut bei Gmilas Chasudem, because they don't have the Möglichkeiten. Für einen anderen Menschen was ein guter bei Gmilas Chasudem, but they don't have time for Teure, so they are gute Beteure. Und für einen Menschen was ein Avoide, weil wir angehen in nicht, wo das meint. Aber geht der Gedanke, als Leucht nur im Heulen Oimeit. Es ist nur ein Mensch, that personifies all three things. Is Heulen Oimeit im Stoimen. Wir können sagen, als ein Mensch soll verkörpern in sich, sei teure, sei avoide. Aber bei den Menschen, alle Gsubim, was geschrieben, mit mir selber, die Gsubim, was geschrieben hat, Sachspuren gedrückt. Gaat die Idee, Schasse, jede Sache. Ich denke, ich habe gefragt, geschrieben in dem Cipher, hat geschrieben, noch mal Nummern, hat geschrieben, Rusche Taivis, nie ein Reich Jid, which everybody knows is neither here, and then he wrote, wie Chabeitz. Who Yid, who buys Tzaddik. I'll tell you, I'll admit to you, I didn't know at the time, what is the Rosh Hashanah from the Chabeitz? He tells me, he gave me mal Mukim, kick noch in Klayuka, dort und dort und dort. Chabes du, the Klayuka was to bring the Adalushin from Vayechoinehu betzedek. Vayechabeitz is Vayechoinein tzedek. Vayechoinein tzedek. Which has many significances. We should take a like that Dukash of Bechoinin Tzedek, because Chasuma Shlaklish Balchi Emes. In alles, was da getun, ist gewesen Emes. Ich habe gefühlt, dass habe zu dem Jid, was gehört früher von Rabbi Tendler in die Kinder haben gesucht, ging als Mischlem, ging als ausgearbeitet in seinen Middes. Ich gewann in den Borderpark, wir kamen auf Seagate in der Zimmer, hat mich so immer Karre gewesen, mit der Habe, mit der Liebschaft, und immer hat gehört, gemacht alle mich Beirichs. Gewesen an Ischu Aschkoilois, man darf tun, Aschlich Zibber, ist again Aschlich Zibber. Man darf tun, Balkoire, ist again Balkoire. Man darf tun, Agabe, ist again Agabe. Man darf suchen, Advarteure, often from him Sharvel, from his sleeves came out Advarteure, whether it was to the Shidas, or whether it was before Kriyas HaTorah, was Ishu Aschkoilois, Gudel Moid, mit dem Allemen, weil sich der Wiesel und Nafschai. Der Minute, was einer von den Kindern, von der Kodester, von Rabbi Reuben came, he ready to give it over, even though he had the Chazukah of saying the Divrei Torah. Hat Azami in Warenkeit, was ist Mama Shloishim ki Yesipa. Ich habe getroffen in Hamuy, einer habe ich noch vergessen, raus wegen der Straße. Shloishim de Wurm Oilem Oimid, aber gesagt Oimid im Stoimen, teure Avoide Gmilas Chasudem. Menschen weiß nicht, aber es du Avoide, bei der Chlau, Menschen tatschen, Avoide, ist Avoide Sakarbunes, Avoide Satfille. So, aber du, ich denke, mich nahe ist, wenn man bei Urois, bringt einen anderen Bescheid. Er sagt, Avoide ist Avoide Mamesh. Avoide ist der mit einem Oisig, wie Yeshiva Shaloilam, über Tekinoi. Bringt das in Cipher Amur, der Shemlei Bubois. Er bringt eine Reihe. Er sucht doch bei Kiddisch, sucht man doch bei Wurach, er kommt mit Zema, Shiva Kaddish Oisoi, ki wo Yeshua as mit Kol Malachtoi, Ashabur Kim La Asois. Bringt er, wo ist der La Asois? What's the last source? The last source, the Pshat ist, der schon beschaffen der Welt. Aber gewollt, als jeden Menschen sollen warten, Mamschel da, die Erzieher in der Welt. In Lodem touch der Sefer Amur, B'Shem Lebubois, as avoid might not avoid the mamish. And as we know it, we have bills to pay, we have utilities to pay, we have to pay Schalimid, and have koifen Arba Minim, everything costs money. His Lodem touch, as Shloishim Oil, a teure bal avoide. And that he gewesen, that he personified both. It's mamish, it's out of style today. But he was a Talmud Chochem Miflig, Yediyas Hashas, in Medrushim, in Alma, whatever subject I touched about, he knew it all. And I'll tell you something else. What blew me away completely is in the summer when I'm there. I used to say a shir in Pirkei Avos, Shabbos noch Mittag. Der Mordche Shmuel Yonasan, Talmud Chochem Utzim Oid. Even after his injury, never, he would walk and he would come from his house and he would come to the shir to listen to my shir. Can you imagine? This is mamash. Look, the ish Moshe unav moed. We call who the mashu up now. Dumu der Mordche. Ke mukam shatu moise gedilusoi. Shoma tu moise anus inisoi. I found in Hamur a hesped that Mordche Shmuel Yonasan gave on the Yid, the guys, the Ritzchok Schlesinger, going back to Shin Samach Aleph, more than 25 years ago. In the Eredort, interessant, the Eredort von Noach, Dorshim l'Schwach, Dorshim l'Gnai. Dr. Versteht sich, Dorshim l'Schwach, jeder versteht, man sucht Dilles, was ist Buches, man sucht Schwuchem auf ein Nifter, weil Malchise der Arre, ist kein Malchise der Rekier. Man rechnet sich, oben in den Himmel, wo ist man sucht von dem Mensch, lass mal gehen sehen. Wo suchen Menschen auf dem Jid, in laut dem wird an schon mal gemischpet, laut Pikchazim, Mohammed Devar. Du sie erst Dorshim Moshe l'Schwach, then he touched erst Dorshim Moshe l'Gnai. He touched in des Mannen von Zures, in des Mannen, wenn ein Mensch ist krank, in des Mannen, wo es der Kimmen Tega, Schrein Boi Chaifetz Bohem. How did he act then? How did he conduct his mitzvahs, or his tefillah b'tzibur, or whatever it was? Hat getaucht, erst Dorshim l'Gnai. In these Mannen was he going Gnai's Mannen. And I think that we can say on Mordche Shmuel Yonasan, letzte Periode, he suffered, and with the fact that he suffered, it's a weggemacht, und gefiert Warte sein an Hüge, gesessen alle Teure, alle Beide, und gediente alle Sachen, was gediente alle Juden. In dem Mama dort hat auch gesucht, hat er gestellt auf dem Zarli Ulechu Uchi Yonasan, der Amte Lima Oid, die Fleißu Avos Chulima Havas Nushim, hat dort getatscht, als Mahavas Nushim mit dem Pshat ist, weil die Gemurre sucht doch, verwusst darf man lieb Waber, weil der Waber ist dann ein Megadlois als Brunaini, Matzilois als Suni Menachet. Hat er gesucht, der Hesped auf dem Ida, der Jide gewesen, dadurch dem was ein Gestitz, Moides a Teure, durch dem hat er geholfen, Megadlois als Brunaini, Matzilois so ist der Chet, der Drusche Sechwan, in Fluois, Bepe Mapik Margulies, in the Tamchen der Reise, and all these things you can say on Mordche Shmuel Yonasan. He was a Tamchen der Reise of an Hexton level, and he was a Peh Mapik Maguliois. I saw in the Surim, the Fregen Ashale, what the Pshat Tzar Yulech Uchi Yonasan. But what's that to do with Amelech Ungari from Yonasan Uchi? He wasn't his brother. It was not his brother. A moiridike gedank, Dr. Azoy. What should he have said on Yonasan? He should have said Ahivi. Yedidi, Chaveiri. That's not enough, because if you lose an oyev, in mistalek oyev, efshel achapes oyev sheni. Efshel achapes, yedid acher machlef. You can find another friend to replace the friend. Aber berega shem falit abrider, loch ein tachlef. There's no exchange for a brother. So when David HaMelech was masped Yonasan, and he said, Tzadu lech uchi Yonasan, he called him uchi because he is irreplaceable. Mordche Shmuel Yonasan is irreplaceable. Irreplaceable. Am Tulim Oid. We start no Am Tulim Oid, and noch zum Chazal drüber noch mal an Ahovim und an Eimim. We start no Am Tu, Neimes. Man weiß doch, als der Recheres kommt mit der Teure. Teure hat auch Hashivas, wenn ein Mensch führt sich auf mit Mittesteuves, wenn ein Mensch steht, wie der Teure heißt, wenn ein Mensch verginnt der Zweiten, wenn ein Mensch in Neueste Beoil, wenn ein Mensch ist mit Star, Bezahl, Shechawairoi. Demals hat der Teure Hashivas, weil der Recheres kommt mit der Teure. Neimes encompasses all of that. Someone is a nuim. The Recheu Darkei Noyam. Bechondes to Veseu Shloishim. Mordche hat gehad den Neimes. Gehad doppelt Neimes. In der Neimes ist lustig gewesen an der Recheres Kadmel der Teure. Über dem ist dann Teure gewesen als wichtig, was er weggestellt auf Seuda von Neimes, von der Recheu Darkei Noyam. Baruch Hashem, wir sitzen zusammen, die Kinder, du einiglich, können wir weiter suchen, was wir früher gehört, Janke Wini Loi Mes, Mazaroi Bachayim, Afi Bachayim hat aufgestellt, das Scheine, Doir, Parisechu, Mesikim, Zilchu Nueh, Amasamayim, Yoredes Tachtechu. We have a big loss. We have a big loss. Abatkum hat amu gesucht, dass geht weg ein Rebbe von der Welt, kommen sie nahe, 7 Rabunem. Geht weg ein ehrlicher Talmud Chuchem, ein ehrlicher Balabus. Ein ehrlicher Balabus, was hat verkörpert in sich teure. Geht damit, das finde ich Stapkes. Jeder Mittwoch hat nicht gearbeitet, ist gewesen, Mule war gut, ist mit teure. Geschrieben. Ich bin Käses als Teufel bei Mosnov. Ich bin am Mai schiebte Wuren der Cheuchim. Geht weg als Ayid. Is nicht so mal leib. He's not replaceable. Zalu leche uche Yonasan. Am zu liebe oid. Das eine geht der Beter von deine Sprüche, von deine Kinder, von der Einiglich. Das eine geht der Beter von deine Jedidem. Da eben zu helfen. You should send us a replacement or send us a goyel in Hayrebi Meini Umay.
In the last 12 years, Tati now in Shachas by the Berkovitz Shul. All the years growing up, I remember Tati used to go once a year to that Berkovitz to be Chazik. In the last 12 years, Tati was part of the Shachas minyan there. It was a very big part of his life. He was very close to the Berkovitz and his Choshev son-in-law, Heshet Zeitlin. We'd like to call upon the Zeitlin to say a few words. We did as a chagos to Tati.
A good Tevach, it's Mordche Shabbos, so there's a story of the Baal Shem Tov that comes to mind when I think about the Mordche. As was mentioned, for the past 9 years, I'm living in Seagate and at the schus to daven in the mornings with the Mordche. So the Baal Shem Tov was once walking with his Talmidim, and they see that the lake, the river is frozen. It's a shtik eyes. And the Talmidim are walking by and they see the Agoy is taking a twig and he puts in the ice a cross, a tzelem. So the Talmidim turn to the Baal Shem Tov and they say, the Baal Shem Tov has gelernt that whatever a Yid sees is a hira, is a lesson for him in Avodas Hashem. As well as come and learn from them that Agoy is making a Shesti Ve'erev in the frozen river. But the Baal Shem Tov gesagt that ein mayim ala Torah. But if the Torah is farfroren, is yamot, it can lead even to inin from kfira. Actually, in the morning minyan, usually my shver, Rabbi Berkman, Lozain Gesund, shares up some part, and lately he shares from the Sefer HaYom Yom that the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, put together, even before his Nesias, a keta, a piskam, every day. So yesterday, the piskam was, and I was thinking about Mordechai when I heard it, that Tzivishin, Kelt, Kfira is Adina Mechitza. Kfar, Keltkeit, Kfar and Kfira, it's the same letters. There's a difference in a Yud and a Vav. But if the Yiddishkeit, if Torah is farfroren, Ona Islavos, that's not coming close to the Eibishter. The Eibishter is a Vayelikecha Eish Oichlohu, is a flam fire. And thus is given to Mordechai. You came into shul, you didn't miss him. You heard him, B'kol Rash Godel, mit Islavos, mit Avarimkeit, with an enthusiasm. And personally for me, it was it's a Zen Ayid that came, it's a Gemutshet Abissel that came to daven, mit der ganze Koyach, mit der ganze Chayes. After davening, you would sit around and hear a vart, and there was always some mezainas that was there, and you always make sure, take for your wife, take home, take something, a donut, a cookie. So just one vart that I remember sharing with him the last few weeks, before his tira was Yaakov Avinu sent Yosef lechna re'ei ashloim achecha v'ashiveni davar, and Yosef goes to his brothers, and vayimtzareu ish, who tells him that they're planning to kill you, and yet Yosef continues to go to his brothers. Shaltzach hashayla, it's not one of Kibbud Av, it's not one of the Gimel Averos of Yehareg Val Yaver. So why is Yosef, how is he allowed to put himself in a Malkum Sakana if he knows his brothers are planning to kill him? And he's not even going to be Mali the Shlichus. Yaakov Avinu, his tata, told him Ashiveni Davar. He's not going to be Ashiveni Davar. He knows that he's putting himself in a Sakana. So I shared with him an answer that in the Rambam, in the Mordche, I think the Kesef Mishnah brings, so the Nimuki Yosef, that only the Gimel Averis is Yehareg Al Yaver, but Adam Godel, who sees that the dirt is parot in a certain mitzvah, so even though, so in order, Laman Yishmu, Laman Yiru, V'yilmadu, they'll learn to impress upon them the importance of a certain mitzvah which lacks a certain laxity in a certain mitzvah, so you're able to be Moshe Nefesh for that mitzvah also. So Madam, I shared with him that Yosef, he saw that by his brothers there's lacking in Kibbud Av, from the etzem fact that they hated him. Eshton's before, Reuven, Bilba, Yitzui, Aviv, and Shimon and Levi, they didn't consult with their father by Shem, and the etzem fact that they hated him. Vayisnu Oisei, why? Vayisrael Av Es Yosef Mikol Banav. And that's why the brothers hated him. So the etzem sina that they had to him was the lack of Kibbud Av. And therefore Yosef was ready to be Moshe Nefesh to impress upon his brothers that even though he knows that he hates them, that they hate him, he's ready to show that if their father gave a shlichus, he's ready to go to be Mali their shlichus. So this, when Mordche heard the word, he said, Rabbi Yeshua, as he was always makbid to call me Rabbi Yeshua, Baruch Hashem, my children, I'm very proud of them. They're Mishtadel and Kibbud Aveim. Just for me, was inspiration to see Mishpacha was gitzach up and Tate. Yehi Zichar Baruch.
We want to thank all the speakers and the Grace, Pinchas, Chadman, Sophie Lubin, the beautiful speeches, Yuna Yosin Alav, the Chlusn Alav, Shkoyach, Achnach and Chovev, Kipshito, Ach and Chovev. I'd like to call up our Chushva brother Yoni, our special brother Yoni. The truth is, all my siblings are gems. And gems are all special, but Yoni will represent all of us, and I'll take this opportunity, B'Shem Mishpucha, to give Yoni a special thank you for all the work he's putting into printing out Tati's Gillian, to bring Tati's Torah to the family in an accessible way every single week. We know how much work it takes, and it's enjoyed immensely by everybody who reads it. And learning Tati's Torah is say comforting, therapeutic, makes us feel a strong connection to Tati. Shkoyach Yoni. Ladies, please lend us your ears. I'm going to speak in English for many reasons. I know it's very late and everybody had enough speeches. And honestly, I am not too excited to speak either. But it just became, the responsibility just became much greater by saying that I'm speaking, with all my brothers. It makes the responsibility much greater. But we'll say what we have to say. There's a saying, Achra Mois Kedoshim. Usually, when a person passes away, even if he wasn't the greatest of men, when he passes away, he becomes great. In our case,
Tati, we all knew Tati was a great man, was a special man. But after hearing the Espaidim by the Levaya, after sitting Shiva for a whole week and seeing hundreds of people and hearing from many of them, I could say now, after sitting through this Mamid and hearing such great speeches and such special things that I didn't even know myself, and I was very nesoided. Befrat, like Av Mitzchak said, I'm busy with Tati's Sfurim, and I'm spending hours just to understand what he writes. Trying to understand what he means, seeing his vast knowledge, his deep insights, and also seeing his Ashkufas HaChaim, which comes out from when you read what a person writes. We see it was a life of Bechol Hen Am Levudad Yishkoin. Levudad is Bechol Derechei Chudawai. We see his life was a life of Bechol Derechei Chudawai. And yes, we could say Achre Mois Kedoshim. We realize now even more that his way of life was a life of Kedusha. I would like to share a note. I'm speaking in English, so I would appreciate if it's quiet on both sides. I would like to share a note that Tati wrote on his 25th birthday, which basically is almost 51 years ago. He wrote it exact on his birthday, Chuf Aleph Uder, Tuf Shin Lamed Gimel. Still lived in Borough Park. I'm going to read Tati's words. Hayoim nesaisi ben chuf hay shunem be'ezras Hashem. Hinai gilzei hiyoise mishlish chay udam alay adumois. This age of 25 is usually more than a third of the lifespan of a person, because usually a person lives till the 70. Happens to be very ironic. Tati did live exactly 75 years, which was basically a third of his life. Tati writes, V'kivin shikach, oy v'oy vayli, shadayin ani raik mit Torah. I am empty of Torah, v'yirashimayim. Yumayni kitzayil oyve, yoy machayoyim chodesh v'shunu. One day rushes another day. Roitzvim zeh zeh, v'ani unu ani bu. Where am I coming, Tati writes? Yidia papisgam, kol yoim hi aschules shar yimai chai udam. Every day is the beginning of the rest of his life. Ich seiv koi sivorchi, l'chayne shtadl im yetz Hashem mikane lahabe lahaytiv darki. Ki im lo yachshav ay musai. Omnom g'doyli Yisruel begil zei. G'doyli Yisruel at this age, hoi kva geoinem, adirim beteure, meflugen Yerushalayim, Iprishis. V'hinai chaval gudel b'Yisruel, v'hinai chaval gudel b'Yisruel v'vade loy eye, v'alavai shi eye kuten b'Yisruel. I mean, these words are moiridik. I disagree with Tati because he was a gudel b'Yisruel. At that, when he wrote this paper, when he wrote this, he was being a man who was oisig in learning. When he had an extra minute, is a gesetzliche gelernt. I don't know how it's simple. That's the way he looked at himself, but we know. Tati was a great man in many ways. But I would like to focus on one point that I think encompasses who Tati was as a person and what made it possible for him to achieve greatness in so much different areas. And that is his midas toivis, like we heard, and specifically the midah of anivis, humility. Tati very often spoke about the midah of anuva. He said a lot of toiras, and he spoke about the midah of ishtavis, which is the ultimate anivis, which means, the midas ishtavis means that when you praise a person, or you rebuke, or you give him a psak, or bezoyin, it's all the same. Shvach and bezoyin doesn't make a difference by him. That's the ultimate anivis. Then there's the regular anivis, that a person just shemayach epus and vayim mashiven. I wanted to say this by the Levi, I forgot, so I'll say it now. When I was a kid, once we went on a trip. I don't remember where we were going, to Canada or to someplace else. We made a stop in a shul. And the Rosh Hashiva there, or the roof, my tati asked him, what's your name? Mordche Berkovitz, so from Tel. So he says, Mordche Berkovitz from Tel, you are a shining star. And he says, so what do you do? And Tati says, I work in the bakery. But you were such a shining star, you sit and learn. Tati says, I work. And he got like a little bit of a psak, and it bothered me. So we went out from the shul. I said, Tati, why didn't you tell him that you really sit and learn? So Tati said, no. It just showed me that, his anivis, he was giving nichet to get a psak. Just 2 days ago, I was going through Tati's papers. I saw a very nice pshat Tati brings from the Chiddush. Tati had a very special connection with the Chiddush. And to an extent, Tati considered himself a Talmud of the Chiddush. Tati once told me, he never said he's a Talmud Chochem, but once, by the way, he told me that to be able to learn the Sfurim of the Chiddush, you have to be a Talmud Chochem. So the Chiddush brings a very nice Peshat, Im Loi Shivisi, in Tehillim, Kif Lamed Aleph, Zug David HaMelech, Im Loi Shivisi, Vidoi Mamti. Is an Santa Lucian, Im Loi Shivisi, dort rette, als wegen sein größer Minne, Kigum Lalai, wie a Yoinik. Tash the Chiddush, as David HaMelech, when he was running away from Avshulam, and Shimei ben Gairu hat ihm gescholten, Klulim Reitzis. David HaMelech swore that he will not hurt him, only by his son Shloishim. He gesagt, Shloishim, he should take care of him in the end. But David HaMelech hat gesagt, im Loi Shivisi, it bothered David. Lamasse, es hat gebothert David ein bisschen, hat ihm gescholten. Aber David HaMelech hat gesagt, im Loi Shivisi, also ich bin nicht jetzt in der Mitte von der Stavis, aber er kapunen mit der Mamti. Aber ich geschwiegen, in mir keinen gewähnt, haben eine Luft Wein im Ofen, Schmeich, Kuss und Wein beschieben. In that shtickle, Tati writes, in Ali's Dati, he says his own pshat, im Loi Shivisi mit der Mamti, schreibt dort, im Loi Shivisi, als ich bin nicht mit keinem, der Mitte von der Stavis, I'm sorry, im Loi Shivisi, als ich bin nicht mit keinem, der Mitte von Shivisi, Hashem, in Egli Sumid, mit der Mamti, darf ich schwagen, ich hoffe, ich kann koich zu beten, zu expect, ad Eibischte, Somachtin, Chassudim, Shloi, Kedele, Chateve. Verwus? Weil, als Gai wie Rav Menschen, was Rav Menschen, das schon kein Shvisi, ist Hashem Zilchu. And he writes, wie die HaPisgam von der Heilige Divrei Chaim, ein Mensch, was hyped over viel a kleine Finger, una Kavuna von Rebbeinu Shalom, ist kein Mensch nicht. Al Kapuna, we see the gewaltige Anivis, and what Tati lived with, the Anivis, the Shivisi Hashem. Tati really worked on himself. He once told me, and I'm going to quote his words, I very strongly suggest that you read and internalize the Agedas Ramban every single day. That's what I used to do as a Bucher in Yeshiva and later on in Koilel. And that's how I myself tamed and overcame the terrible two, the twin middas of Kas and Gava. We gave out tonight a paper which Tati wrote when he was 16, his thoughts on the middah of Gava, Nivis. I was going to quote something from it, but I guess everybody could go through it and see Tati's perspective as a 16-year-old boy. Tati learned Torah with Anivis, with humility. If Tati heard a Chiddush from anybody, it's no different who it was, he would become so excited and he would make that person feel like he's $1 million. He would ask him to say it over. He treated everyone with such respect because, like it says in the Agedas Ramban, he considered every person as greater than himself. Because of his humility, like we wrote in the paper, that's the only middah, Bagav is the only middah that Hashem says, I cannot live with you. Because his humility, he lived with Hashem. So of course, when he came to Shul, he came to Hashem's house. He really felt it. And that feeling compelled him to treat the Shul as he did. So what I would like to say, and and I'm basically saying it to myself, by trying to learn and follow Tati's ways. Whether it should be spending some time once a week or once a day to say the Geras Ramban, whether it is showing respect for another person, going out of our way to show respect to other people, whether it's going out of our way to smile to other people. Smiling to other people doesn't have to be outside only, it could be at home. If you smile to your spouse, to your wife, to your husband, or you give your children a nice smile, now you could give a smile to be Yotzei, or you could do it the way Tati did it, by giving you a genuine smile, a smile that says, I see you, and I'm happy to see you. Or every time something happens, we want to get angry and we control ourselves. By doing these things, besides the fact that we will do ourselves a favor, besides the fact that we will be Mekayim, the Zei Kaili Vanvai, like we heard tonight already, the Gemara Zukt, Havai Doimeloi. And Rashi says, Anvai is Anivu Hi. Kimt aus, wenn ein Mensch fühlt sich auf der Wegen, when he treats people with respect, he gives a person a smile. There's a saying, the people who don't deserve a smile, they are the ones who need it the most. By going out of our way to treat people nicely, this is Zei Kaili Vanvai. This is Mahi Rachem Afatu Rachem. If we will try to emulate into our daily life these things, it will be a Zei Kaili Vanvai, and it will definitely be a big schiz for Tatis and Shuma. And we should be zoiche to be as a tzedek and meet Tati a person.